Good afternoon. Hope everyone is doing well. We will go ahead and get started and let folks sort of trickle in. I'm imagining that some folks are joining us maybe during their lunch hour, so I want to be mindful of time. We are very pleased to be able to present to you today a presentation, a webinar with an overview of government benefits, joined by our great partners and speakers from Oak Wealth Advisors, whom I will introduce in just a moment. First, I want to kick off the call by introducing myself. My name is Ryan Rotundo. I am the Director of Programs for the National Down Syndrome Society. I am a proud younger sibling of an amazing woman with Down syndrome, and I have had some great experience as a special education teacher and get to work with the National Down Syndrome Society as we manage our employment and education programs. So very much tying into the work that we're talking about and some of the earning and saving opportunities and that we'll be looking at today. So just want to give a quick background and introduction to Down syndrome and the National Down Syndrome Society. Never want to make any assumptions as to how people might be joining us. So really just want to give a little bit of insight into our organization. We are a 45-year-old organization, very excited to be able to celebrate that 45th anniversary last year, established in 1979 by a parent of a young woman with Down syndrome. The Goodwin family is a founding family. We were able to recognize them at a tremendous event earlier this year in all of their years of service. But really the goal of our organization and the mission is to empower individuals with Down syndrome and their families by driving policy change, providing resources, engaging with local communities, and shifting public perceptions. And we are very proud to be able to do that each and every day. A couple ways that we do that, really thinking of these verticals of our core program areas. So one being resources and support. NDSS is proud to be able to monitor and maintain a 1-800 helpline for families, physicians, professionals, anyone really from across the Down syndrome and the greater community to reach out, to ask questions, to get connected, to really understand what the needs and priorities of not only our organization, but maybe individuals with Down syndrome and their families currently are. We also have an info box email, which is kind of our newer, obviously, way of being able to field those questions, those inquiries and connections. And so that's a very powerful tool for our organization. We also are building resources in terms of each of our major program areas around education, employment, health, aging, wellness, and so many other areas to be able to put paper and digital copies of information that is backed by subject matter expertise into the hands of family members, professionals across the country who are really doing some great work to support individuals with Down syndrome. Another key vertical for our organization is through advocacy and policy. Our advocacy and policy team has been very busy in the first couple months of this new administration, really understanding at any transition, right, in leadership across the country or at a state or local level, even what some of those implications might be for individuals with Down syndrome and other disabilities as it relates to federal, state, and even some local policies and rules around disability. So our team works very hard. Our headquarter office used to be in New York City. It is now in Washington, D.C. for that very reason. Just last month, we hosted our Down Syndrome Advocacy Conference, which is a tremendous opportunity for individuals and families to come to the nation's capital to get to meet with their legislators, representatives, and senators on both sides of the aisle to really talk about these important issues. If you're not signed up, I would highly encourage you all to take a look at our advocacy and policy updates and get signed up so that you can really be attuned to what's taking place and how you can be involved in some of those efforts. The third column here is our community engagement strategy. So we have a number of wonderful events that take place throughout the year. One in particular is our flagship program, the National Buddy Walk, which kicks off in Times Square in September and takes a group of about 1,000 to 2,000 people up to Central Park in New York City to really showcase what our community is about and what we're capable of, and really highlight the incredible things that individuals with Down syndrome are doing in an awareness walk. So would love to see some of you there. These are also programs that take place across the country. So as I mentioned, this is kind of the kickoff in September, and you will see, if you visit our website for more information on local support, the various buddy walks that take place across the country through local and state level Down syndrome affiliate organizations. And you'll see another few opportunities there for folks to connect through our Athlete Ambassador program and some of our other activities. I will make this portion of the presentation available to our audience as well after the webinar so that you can take a look at these hyperlinks and visit some of these other opportunities on our page. A couple of facts about Down syndrome I'll just share briefly. This is characterized by a third copy of the 21st chromosome. So for those of you that don't know, this is a genetic abnormality or a genetic formation that is indicative of Down syndrome. It was first identified by an English physician, Dr. John Langdon Down, which is where the name comes from, in the United States. And within our organization, we are very focused on the spelling. It is named after that doctor, so capital D-O-W-N. There's no apostrophe or S. And then syndrome is lowercase. So that's an important piece to note as well. Some of the common physical traits of individuals with Down syndrome are low muscle tone, smaller stature, an upward slant to the eyes, and a single crease across the palm of the hand called the single palmar crease. So I'll skip over a few of these other pieces, but just wanted to make note of the prevalence of Down syndrome. So approximately 3,000 to 5,000 babies with Down syndrome are born each year in the United States, which means something close to about 775 births each year are a person with Down syndrome. And again, for the sake of this presentation, I want to make sure we have time to get to our speakers. I'm going to skip over some of the disability employment landscape slides. If we have time, we can certainly circle back, but it'll be attached to the information you receive post-webinar, as well as just a few other links to resources that you can access on our website and through some of our partner organizations to learn more about Down syndrome and the employment landscape and some of the work that we do. So with that, I'm actually going to stop sharing, and I'm going to turn it over to Randy Gillespie and Mike Walther from Oak Wealth Advisors to share a little bit more about the work that they're doing. Thank you both so much for being here today. We appreciate having you.
Ryan, thank you so much to NDSS and to all the families that are joining us today. The opportunity to present to you all again is wonderful. We've been partnering with NDSS for years and absolutely love the relationship, love the families we've gotten to know, and really just love sharing the information we have. In this picture that starts off our slides, it's my brother and I during the holidays at the end of 2024. And this just goes to show that I've been living in the disability community for my 50 plus years with a wonderful younger brother who happens to be on the autism spectrum. And it's really that relationship that led to us forming Oak Wealth Advisors about 17 years ago to serve families like yours and mine who are living in the disability community. And my personal connection to Down syndrome was actually serving as the treasurer and board member for the National Association for Down Syndrome for several years and helping them get on much stronger financial footing before I left. Our firm, Oak Wealth Advisors, is actually a wealth management firm, which is an odd place to get your special needs planning information, but we become a leader nationally, and we serve clients all around the country and on 5 continents who have loved ones with disabilities, because that's our passion, helping families make as much as they possibly can with the wealth they have, and then supplementing that with all the government resources and services that are available to them. And today's topic is going to be looking at what are those government benefits in general that should be available to our loved ones who maybe can't take care of themselves and maybe won't have a career where they can basically afford all the things they're going to need in the future from their earnings. So you can see some of the awards we've won more recently. My colleague Randy Gillespie, who'll be manning the question and answer portion of today's session, has got an amazing background, having served also on the National Association for Down Syndrome board with me, having a daughter with Down syndrome, and being an incredible advocate both in our local community and nationally for others with Down syndrome. In fact, she's the current village commissioner for disability inclusion. So it's definitely a firm that you're going to hear from today that is passionate about helping families like yours and ours make the most of our lives. So if you have questions, Randy's going to be looking at the question and answer section of the webinar. If you have a question, put it in there. If she can answer it directly and it's relatively specific, she'll do that. If it relates to something I don't cover well in the materials, she'll interrupt me and we'll make sure we get it covered appropriately for everyone that's tuning in today. In addition, at the end of our presentation, you'll see the links to our website where you can download the information from today's presentation and lots of other information that can assist your family. So we wanted to start by saying that throughout our presentation, we'll use what's known as person-first language. Some people want to be known as the Down syndrome kid. And by all means, that identity first language is absolutely fine. That's wonderful that people are proud of their identity. And on a one-on-one type conversation with that person or their family, we'll gladly honor that wish. But in a group setting, we're going to use person first language. We feel that's going to respect most people's wishes, and we don't mean to offend anybody. So we just want to make sure you understand why we're talking the way we are when we reference someone who has Down syndrome. So what is it that a firm like ours can provide to a family like yours? What is it that we do in the community? And what can you find if you're looking for a special needs financial planner in your community if you don't want to work with us? Well, they should be doing all the things listed on this screen, which would be helping you find and keep government resources, planning for the future financial and care needs of your loved one, creating a structure around the person to help them sustain their independence at the highest possible level, and then helping you find and get access to additional resources as needed, and then having a system in place to protect your loved one from creditors on the financial side and predators on the personal side in their lives. And then also helping you figure out the most efficient way to move whatever resources your family has, whether that's through life insurance, retirement plans, or other assets, from your ownership down to them when you pass away. Those are things that a special needs planner should be able to do for you. So we typically think of a comprehensive financial plan of having 8 elements. You can see those all on the screen right now. And in the center of all that is communicating about these different elements with your extended family. So as you do the planning around your loved one, you want to make sure that other relatives and people that are important to your family know about the planning you're doing. And today's session is going to focus solely at that item on the top, public benefits. And since many of you are tuning in from different states around the country, we're not going to have state-specific information. When I get to a slide that's going to be different by state, I'll try to reference that fact and talk about the highlights of the program in general. As you're probably aware, if you're in California, Massachusetts, states like that typically have higher income taxes, the benefit is you also have a better suite of benefits that are more robust than some other states that are either no income tax states or lower tax states. So with that, let's start with the details. What are the public benefits we're talking about today? Well, it's really replacing the things that your loved one's going to get through their school system when they age out. And for all of our loved ones who are receiving services through their school system, that age of termination is going to be somewhere between 21 and 26. So we want to be planning in high school for what's going to come next. Super important that you use those high school years, not only to increase your loved one's education, but also their life skills. What things will they need to be successful in the future? And that's part of that transition plan that typically kicks in high school around age 17. As you look at, are they going to graduate at 18? Are they going to continue on in a transition program out to age 21 through 26, depending on your state? I'll have a slide in a minute that will show you state by state what that age limit is for getting the services through the school. And then also making sure that when the bus stops coming, when the school system's no longer providing those services, that the family has a plan for getting health insurance and income benefits to their loved one to be able to keep getting the kinds of services and supports they need. One thing to remember throughout this presentation is that the process is never over. As much as we'd like it to be easy and have a quick finish line, that just isn't reality. Getting benefits is challenging, and keeping them is also a challenge. So the ongoing maintenance process requires that all of us be good record keepers. If you're not great administratively, if there's not a loved one in your family who can assist you with record keeping and documentation, take this as a moment to make a note that it's going to be important for you to partner with someone who can assist you with that, because having good records is going to be essential in helping your loved one get and keep their benefits. Okay, so as I mentioned a minute ago, the public school in which your loved one is attending is going to provide these kinds of support services and programming for them until they age out. As you can see in yellow, there are 3 states that on the person's 21st birthday will terminate the benefits and services through the school system. The majority of the country is in purple, or what we call 21 plus. That means you can continue receiving services through your school system until the normal graduation date of the year in which your loved one turns 21. So if they have a 21st birthday in October and your school system graduates in early June, that child gets services through the school until early June. Okay. You can see the other states as well. The one outlier is Michigan. For the most part, we're looking at 21 or 22 as being the age of termination of high school services. If you're living in the Great Lakes region and you want to extend those years a few more, move to Michigan if you're able to. You can keep services through age 26 plus, so basically through the May or June of the year in which your school finishes out. Randy, any questions about the time frame for when people age out of school supports?
No, we're all set.
Beautiful. Okay, so let's look at what it takes to get the primary, what are called means tested benefits. These are the benefits that most people want to get access to if their loved one can't take care of themselves. Now, we have lots of stories on our podcast. We partner with lots of organizations that employ or are founded by people with Down syndrome. And we know lots of people find great financial success with Down syndrome being part of who they are. That being said, for a number of our loved ones, they won't be able to find sufficient employment to take care of their financial needs. As a result of that, the government's going to provide access to 3 primary benefits. Those 3 primary benefits are an income benefit that will pay for housing. So keeping a roof over their head is one of the things the government's got to provide. They do that through giving the person income to pay for rent or housing expenses. Second thing is medical care. We'll talk about what Medicaid does as a health insurance as well as a benefit program. And the last thing is food. So we're going to give you food, shelter, and healthcare. We're also going to talk about the SNAP benefit today, which is the food benefit that people are entitled to once they turn age 22 if they're not fully employed and able to pay for their own food. But let's talk about eligibility first, because those kinds of benefit programs, supplemental security income, which is what SSI stands for, Medicaid, and the SNAP program are all going to require the person be eligible. Eligibility to the federal government does not simply mean that your loved one has Down syndrome. Down syndrome is a medical condition, but if your loved one has Down syndrome and makes $40,000 a year, the government's not going to see them as disabled. The disability has to be twofold. One, a medical condition, which Down syndrome would qualify as, and an inability to work at what the government deems to be substantial gainful activity level, which is roughly $15,000 of income a year. That works out to about $1,300 a month. So if your loved one's going to be able to make that kind of money, the government's going to say, wonderful, they can earn that much, they can take care of themselves financially. You're not going to be eligible for the benefits that I'm about to talk about. But for those of our loved ones who can't do that, this is what they're going to look at. They're going to say, okay, disability, Down syndrome, check. Ability to earn income. Well, if you're applying for these benefits at age 18, there's a decent chance your loved one's never worked in a capacity while they're in school to have made $15,000 a year. So most of us can go to the Social Security office and say with a completely honest face, nope, my loved one's never done that. And here's a letter from our primary care physician that states that because of their Down syndrome diagnosis and potentially some other co-occurring issue, I don't believe as a medical professional that this individual will be able to earn a substantial gainful activity amount of money because of their inability to work on a consistent, ongoing basis in a capacity of employment that would earn that kind of money. So if a doctor's letter, a recent doctor's letter that states that, and no evidence to the contrary that they've worked in the past, you should be able to prove disability and lack of ability to earn income, at which point they should be eligible for that part. The other thing they're going to look at, and let me go through the income piece in a second, you also look at assets. So you have to have less than $2,000 of assets in the person's name and not have the earned income. Also, you can't have unearned income. So if they're eligible to receive money from a trust every month and the trust gives them $1,000 a month, that's $12,000 a year. That's closing in on that $15,000 of income. That could be a problem. So we want to watch out for unearned income. gifts from people that are coming on a consistent basis. Also, in-kind support and maintenance. If you're going to allow them to live in your house rent-free as an adult, as many families do, if they're not being charged rent, the amount of money they get from the government is not going to be the full benefit, which currently is $967 from SSI. It'll be reduced by 1/3 down to about $645. You'll still get something, but less for providing that in-kind support and maintenance of free housing. And the last one is deemed income. This will trip some people up. How many of us think, well, if we can avoid the income test by having our loved one volunteer and work at a nonprofit, well, hey, great. They don't get paid, but they have all the other benefits of employment. They have colleagues, they've got a place to go every day, they feel part of a group, that community feeling is awesome. The money's not the most important thing. Maybe it's these other elements of employment that are most valuable to our family. So we'll just take a job where there's no income. Well, the government's going to continually ask every year, is the person working? Is the person working? Is the person working? Well, you have to be honest and say, well, yeah, they're volunteering and working at XYZ nonprofit. And they'll say, okay, what's the job they're doing? What's their role there? And they'll then impute the income to them as if that was a paid position at some other organization. That's what deemed income is. So if they're doing a job that has an equivalent value, if they're being paid, that takes them over that substantial gainful activity level of $15,000 a year, well, then we're going to lose our SSI eligibility because we're earning too much money. So we want to watch out for all those potential sources of income coming in, whether it's from investment accounts, gifting, actual earnings, deemed income, or people providing free housing. Those can all limit our eligibility. So one thing to keep in mind is that these rules are constantly changing. I don't need to tell anybody on this call, you have to be hiding in a cave to not know that things are changing rapidly in Washington and local communities as well. The biggest change impacting public benefits occurred late last year. As of October 1st of 2024, the government removed the deduction of income from the in-kind support and maintenance deduction if people were receiving free food from their family. Think about it. Your loved one's living at home. You go out and buy groceries for your family. If your loved one's not paying for any of that, they're getting, quote, free food living at home. Under the prior rules, that could cause that 1/3 deduction of benefits solely based on food being provided. Well, they wiped that out. It was too hard to keep track of. They weren't, as a government, doing a good job following up and asking those questions and really getting proof of documentation that the person was paying their fair share. So as a result of that, they wiped out food. So now, if you're talking to people who are looking at the old rules, you can inform them. It's not a problem. The person doesn't actually have to pay for their share of food, and there's not going to be any risk of them losing benefits if they're not paying. Next one, the National Rental Subsidy Exception. Prior to October 1st of last year, unless you're living in one of 7 states, including Illinois, where Randy and I currently reside, you had to charge the fair market value of rent to your loved one. And if you provided them with the money to pay their rent and they weren't paying the fair market value, they could lose up to 1/3 of their benefit. With the national subsidy exception, they are now saying that in any state, all 50 of them, as long as the individual is paying at least the amount they would lose from an ISM deduction, which is roughly $340, you can see right there on the slide, $342 for 2025. If they're paying that much in rent or more out of their own monies, then they get their full check of $967 from SSI. Now, I'll use the 967 number. That's a federal number. In some states, there's an additional state payment. So some of our loved ones might be receiving more than $1,000 a month in monthly support. But nationally, it's a 967 base. Okay. So what we'd want to tell families is if we want to get that full check from the government, let's have that SSI check come in, then take a portion of it, say $400, have the child pay $400 in rent to the parents for providing the free housing or towards wherever the rent is. If it's to a third-party landlord, that's fine. Have them pay the $400 of rent. They keep their full check. If you're giving them the free housing, but now you're charging them $400 in rent, you now have, for a full year, $4,800 of income to pick up on your tax return. So some families scoff at that. They say, I don't want to pay taxes on that. Good news. if you're the landlord, you're the homeowner, you're providing that resource, that rent to your loved one. They're paying you the $4,800 a year in my example. You also have expenses related to that: mortgage, real estate taxes, utilities, providing the house with whatever you've got, heat, cooling, utilities. All that can be an expense to offset the income. And in most cases, we don't see families actually have any net taxable income from the rent they're receiving from their loved one, and they're allowed to keep their full check. So something to think about there, a relatively new rule. We want people to benefit from that by attending today's presentation. The last one is that with these new changes, it should be that more of our loved ones are going to be eligible for SSI and Medicaid services. They should get the maximum benefit, the $967 for 2025, and that number is indexed every year. We expect that to go up. Inflation's come down a little bit this year, so the rate of change might not be as much next year as it has in the past, but it'll be approaching $1,000 a month. And also, it gives our loved ones more housing options. Some people were having their loved ones live in less desirable locations that had lower rents because of the rules that were in existence prior to September 30th of last year. Now they can live anywhere as long as they pay that minimum amount of $342 or more in rent a month. They get their full SSI check. Okay, lots of information there, but really important to understand how much better things have gotten for our loved ones as a result of that change that occurred late last year. So as I was mentioning earlier, when you apply for benefits, you're going to look at both the disability and the ability to earn money as a primary review process. The other thing you look at is resources. When they say resources, they really mean how much money does a person have access to. Okay, that number, and this has been set for over 30 years, is $2,000. There's been lots of push nationally to get that number increased to 10,000. Thus far, there's no legislation that's pending right now that I'm aware of that pushed it to 10 grand, although everybody wants it to happen. The reason why that number is such a problem is $2,000 is not very much to go over. The individual could be receiving $967 a month, in some states over $1,000 a month. If they're not spending that money down regularly or moving it into an account that's not viewed by the government as being an available resource for the loved one, like an ABLE account or a special needs trust. We're not going to be talking about those accounts today, but those are two resources that do not count for eligibility purposes. But things like savings bonds, being named as a joint owner on a family checking account. Those are the most typical places where people are going to have money sitting they don't think about. They think, well, we don't have any accounts in our loved one's name, therefore they don't have $2,000. We don't have to worry about that. Well, if when they're a teenager, you added them onto a family checking account to make it easier for them to access money, maybe they could use a debit card related to the account, maybe they could withdraw $50 from the bank at an ATM if they needed it. If their name's on the account, the government deems all the dollars in that account to be available to them. That often is going to put your loved one over $2,000. So we want to be careful to look everywhere. If they got a savings bond as a result of their birth, it was filed away in a drawer or in a lockbox at a bank somewhere, or they got additional bonds given to them at birthdays, holidays, things like that that have their name on them. Families forget about those things. The government does not. So they'll add up all those different resources, and if it's over $2,000, you're not eligible for the means tested benefits of SSI and Medicaid. It's really horrible, but people go in and make their application for those two major benefits, not knowing about the $2,000 asset limit, and they get denied. So before you go with your loved one at age 18 or older to apply for SSI and Medicaid, we want to make sure we look everywhere to make sure they don't have those assets. If they do, we need to spend them on the individual. If you found like $10,000 in an account in their name and the parents took that money out and gave it to themselves, that's an improper distribution of those funds. There'll be a waiting period before the eligibility kicks back in. So you want to spend it for the loved one or put it into an ABLE account or a special needs trust. If you do that kind of a transfer, it stays eligible for the individual, but it's not deemed to count towards that $2,000 limit. So that's how we want to resolve those issues if there's too much money at the time of an application. Okay. This one slide, I'm not going to spend that much time on, but it's a downloadable resource from our website. It summarizes across the bottom everything I just said about eligibility and benefit levels for SSI, and we're going to talk about Medicaid in a minute. but those are what are called the means tested benefits, basically for someone who has a disability and is deemed to be poor because they're not working and have less than $2,000 of available resources. For our loved ones who are working, the latter part of our presentation is going to cover those benefits, which are SSDI, Supplemental Security Disability Income, and Medicare, another form of medical insurance, which many of us will receive when we hit retirement. And you're looking at me thinking maybe Mike's already getting Medicare. I'm not there yet, but it's not too far away. And then SSDI, which is available to anyone who's worked and has a disability that then keeps them from working in the future. So our loved ones with Down syndrome can be eligible for those things as well. We'll talk about how they'd be eligible for their own work record to get those things. In addition, they can be eligible to get SSDI and Medicare on a parent's work record once a parent retires. So those are benefits for someone who's disabled without having to meet that income threshold or the asset threshold. So slightly different qualifications. We're going to focus primarily on the bottom half of this chart today, which are the means tested benefits. Okay, again, downloadable resource from the oakwealth.com website. I encourage you to take that. We update it every year. So if you're curious about new numbers next year, come back and visit us in 2026. This will be updated for the new numbers next year. So what are the Medicaid waiver programs? People think of Medicaid as being health insurance, which it is. It's the payer of last resort. So if you're working under Obamacare, we're allowed to keep our loved ones on the company healthcare plan as long as our loved one is disabled for the rest of their life. It used to be you had to be a full-time student through age 26 to stay on a parent's plan. After the Affordable Care Act, we now can keep our loved ones on as long as we've got company-provided health insurance. They can stay on as a family member, regardless of age, as long as they have a disability. So nice benefit there. Medicaid will be a supplement. It's the backup payer. If private healthcare doesn't pay, Medicaid might pay. If at some point in the future they have Medicare, Medicaid's going to still be available. It'll be the secondary to Medicare as well. It's always the payer of last resort, but the Medicaid healthcare is important. The waiver programs, we would argue, are even more important. So a lot of times families will scoff and say, you know what, I don't need the money on SSI. It seems like it's too hard to get. And Medicaid, I don't really want that health insurance. I've got private insurance, we'll be fine. I'm not going to bother with all this. Well, the reality is the Medicaid waiver services will provide your loved one with the most of their supports, the primary section of supports, once they finish high school. So to just blow off Medicaid because we don't want the health insurance component means we're giving up all the waiver programs. As you can read on this slide, Medicaid's going to be a federal program, but it's delivered at the state level. So as we move from state to state, we have to understand that those programs we might have been accustomed to where we've been living will be different in the new state we would now reside in. And there's a whole new process, a whole new application at the state level when you move from state to state. And there'll be a period of waiting time. In some states, it could be over a year where you're without these government benefits. So that's where you really learn just how valuable your Medicaid waiver programs are, because they provide daily activities for your loved one, supports that they might need for healthcare or for work things, whatever it might be they need. Typically, there's a Medicaid program to support that. So we want to get that application done at the same time we're applying for the income benefit of SSI. Eligibility starts at age 18, so we could still be in the school setting applying for these services. We want to make sure that we have this taken care of and thought through before we leave high school, because at that point, you've got a gap until you get these in place. Okay. As it says at the bottom there, most states have long waiting lists. In Illinois, it's over 20,000 people waiting for services. And the way to move up that waiting list is, okay, we're out of school now. We've got a more emergent need for services. Or if parents lose their employment, and there's no longer any income coming in, that person becomes a little more desperate for support. That can help you move up waiting list as well. But most states have some form of a waiting list. So the sooner you can apply after age 18, the more likely it is your loved one will have services ready and waiting when they age out of the school system.
Mike, may I interject, please? And also, when you as a family apply for SSI for your loved one, it's not automatic. The departments are short-staffed. There's not a lot of people around. So it is time consuming. And it could take upwards of a year, maybe 13, 14 months for that first check to get to your home. So don't just think that if you have an appointment, it's going to be automatic. Get all your ducks in a row and be prepared to wait.
Thanks, Shane. It's a good point. So it's not just the you've been accepted for Medicaid. And we still have to wait to get the programs assigned and everything else. And that can take, as she said, months or potentially even more than a year. So what kinds of services and supports are we talking about? Well, there's different kinds of waivers in every state. Some are for children, others are for adults. There can be home and community-based services, which are the primary ones most people look for. That's going to be health-related, home and community supports, and really the family gets to pick, based on their loved one's needs and abilities, which ones are most appropriate for where they are at that stage of life. There's also in many states an ability for a budget to be provided by the state, and the individual with family support has the ability to self-direct who they hire and bring in for those services. And in many cases, a parent can be hired to provide the care. So effectively, the government's paying a parent for taking care of their loved one, and that's totally acceptable. And in most states, that income coming into the parent as a support worker is non-taxable. Okay, so work with your tax advisor in the state you're in to make sure that's applicable in your state. But in many of the states where our clients reside, that's the case. In addition, for most of our loved ones, they want to work. Well, great. Medicaid support services include vocational services, helping your loved one get the skills they need, possibly even being a job coach or going on site with them to their first job to help them get acclimated, to help them understand all the responsibilities they have in their new role working. And then for those who aren't going to work, having some daily activities, whether it's day services or other things around their living community that gives them something to do every day. So these are all the kinds of things that Medicaid waiver programs can provide for our loved ones. Again, depending on the level of need, ability, challenges, and wishes, you can get the right services in place around your loved one, assuming you qualify for and properly apply for Medicaid. Okay. Moving on from Medicaid and SSI, the third leg I mentioned is food. Well, food used to come through what's called food stamps. People still call it that, but for years it's been called the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP for short. It's primarily used to purchase groceries. Okay, it's got to be, as it says there on the slide, non-warm prepared food. So you can't go buy from the deli a warm, fully cooked chicken and take it home. That's not going to be able to be paid for with your SNAP money. But you could buy a frozen pizza and pretty much anything else in the grocery store except alcohol and cleaning supplies. Basically, any food item that's not warm and pre-prepared is eligible. There are roughly 42 million people in the country with a SNAP card. So virtually every grocery store, virtually all online grocers will have an ability to accept your SNAP card. It's essentially a debit card that's preloaded every month with a set amount of money, typically somewhere in the $200 to $300 range. And that's going to provide with groceries. One of the nice things that happened during COVID is that most local grocery stores and even major national retailers like Amazon updated their website. So if you put in your SNAP card as a payment method and you purchase groceries through an online grocer, it will automatically charge the SNAP card for whatever food is eligible until the SNAP balance is exhausted for the month. Really nice feature, makes it easier for our loved ones to access groceries. It actually makes it easier for our families who've got a loved one living with them who has a SNAP card to utilize the SNAP proceeds first for that loved one's food, and then any other food items get charged to the other credit card on file. So it's a really nice way to have the government pay for that loved one's food up to roughly $300 a month. So it's $3,500, $3,600 a year over a 50 to 70 year lifespan. Post age 22, and SNAP kicks in at 22, I should clarify that. Medicaid, SSI, those programs are available starting at age 18. SNAP is at age 22. And unfortunately, these are all separate applications. SNAP, you go online. The link is right there. And you can find your specific state SNAP application site by going to the federal site under the USDA. We really encourage families to do that. That's a lot of money to utilize over a lifetime. Somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000 of food. We want to take advantage of that. And it's super easy to use a SNAP card. And hopefully there's not any stigma anymore, as you see 42 million people are using a SNAP card. Okay. The reason why we spend so much time talking about the different benefits and how challenging they can get is this slide. This is the last year for which we've got full data. It's for 2023 decisions by the federal government. This looks at, and I'll read the numbers to you because it might be hard to see depending on the size of the screen you're viewing, how many people applied and how many people got accepted for SSI and Medicaid, okay, the means tested benefits. Well, for 2023, close to 2 million people applied. The actual number is 1,881,994. Of that, over 60% were denied. Only 39% were approved. So right there, we know that more than half the people who theoretically would be entitled to these benefits that are incredibly valuable and effectively essential for many of our loved ones did not get them. And that number of denials has been in the 60 to 70% range for every year I've looked at this going back 15 years. We don't have the 2024 numbers yet, but I'd be surprised if it drops below 60. We're doing our very best to educate all the families in today's presentation to be in that group that gets approved. And we think our work is helping, but we're still at a level where it's way too high on the denial side. So what happens if you are denied? Well, in many cases, it's a simple oversight. Perhaps it was more than $2,000 in your loved one's name. Maybe you didn't have the proper medical documentation, whatever it might be. Okay, you can fix it very quickly under what's called a reconsideration. Got a number of months to quickly get back to the government and say, hey, you know what? We saw the mistake we made. We've fixed it. Please accept our application now. Well, the numbers there is only 15% of those who go through what's called reconsideration get approved. And of those, again, there were roughly 1.3 million denials. Only 468,000 people of that 1.3 million initially denied even tried a reconsideration. But as I mentioned, 85% denial at reconsideration level. So what do you do next? Then you have to hire an attorney. You could try to do it yourself, but I would tell you, you need to hire an attorney who then helps present your case to what's known in the Social Security Administration as an administrative law judge. There's a hearing where your attorney is going to present your loved one's case about why they should be eligible, that they've met all the qualifications, they'll lay out for the federal government, here are your rules, here's why they're met, let's get the benefits in place. That's the most successful level of appeal. Roughly 45% of those who appeal at that level, and there's less than 250,000 people even tried, got their benefits. So that works out to roughly another 100,000 people. After that, the numbers are dismal. There are 2 more layers of appeal, but at each of those levels, there's only 1% of acceptance. So what we're looking at is roughly 50 to 55% of all loved ones who are applying for benefits actually get them. We want you attending today's presentation to be in that success group. We talked about what it takes to get them. We talked about how valuable they are. Don't be one of the ones who doesn't get them, because these numbers are staggering and they've been bad for years. Okay, so what tips can we provide you to be on the winning side of this? These are the ones that, from hearing from hundreds of families over the years, are the most common ways they get denied. Okay. First one, and this is so much fun. We do this live with a group of people in front of us. I'm going to ask them to raise their hands. If asked by the federal government, your loved one needs to respond only about themselves. It's a tricky question. They'll ask, what is the household size? They might even ask in a different way. They might say, okay, your loved one's living at home. What's the number of people in the household? Tricky question. The answer is always 1. When they're looking at whether or not that person's eligible for benefits, they're looking at the income and resources of the household. We only want them looking at the individual. Now, if everyone in your family happens to have Down syndrome and nobody's working, okay, maybe the household size is greater. But for almost every application, we're talking about just the individual. In our case for today with NDSS, it's an individual who has a Down syndrome diagnosis who's applying for benefits. Their household size is 1. I don't care how many people are living under the roof at the apartment or the house or wherever it might be. The answer to the household size is 1. If you say 2 or more, all of a sudden those other people's income and assets count towards the limits, and you're going to be over. So we're going to be denied benefits. Remember, household size is 1. Number 2, your appointment with the Social Security Administration intake officer, whether it's virtual or in person, is not a good time to brag about your loved one's abilities. Save that for birthdays, family gatherings, holidays, etc. Our loved ones are amazing people. They do amazingly wonderful things. Talk about it with family, not with the Social Security intake officer. And in fact, I would encourage you to talk to your loved one and say, look, for this 30-minute or 40-minute little interview we're about to have with the Social Security office, we have to talk about your challenges and your deficits. Not simply something we want to talk about all the time, but this is a moment when we have to do that. So don't be upset with us. This is why we're doing it. We don't want our loved one to pipe out, oh, I can do that, if they really can't. So if we brag about abilities, the Social Security office is going to say, well, it sounds like even though they haven't worked, they want to work, they're energetic and enthusiastic, they think they can work. Let's just wait and see. No benefits for you. So let's not brag about the abilities. They haven't worked in the past, and the doctor doesn't think that it's reasonable to expect them to work at a substantial gainful activity level in the future. Let's just say that and move on to another question. Okay. Also, in some situations, we've had families in wealthier communities go to the Social Security office, driving a nice car to the visit. Social Security sees the car pull up, family comes in, and so they ask the individual and the person with them, typically a mother or a father, well, do you really need this money? You've got a really nice car. You could probably afford to pay for stuff on your own. You don't need the government's money, do you? Inappropriate question, shouldn't be asked, but it happens. The government's trying to weed out people who are not truly eligible for benefits, but family wealth is not a consideration. Okay, looking at the individual's own resources and ability to earn money. That's all that should be reviewed. So you can simply ignore that question and not answer it, or redirect them and say, you know what, that's not an appropriate question. Our loved one who's here applying for benefits doesn't have any means to take care of him or herself and needs these benefits that we're applying for. And in fact, whatever you might see in the parking lot, might have been gifted to us. Or maybe we now need all of our own resources to pay for our own retirement. We don't have any money to give to our loved one now that they're 18 and an adult. So those are inappropriate questions, but we hear them being asked by the Social Security office from time to time. And as I mentioned earlier, the $2,000 asset test, look everywhere. Get your child's name off of a joint account before you apply. If there are bonds in their name, cash them and spend them. If there's other monies in a savings account for them, spend it or move it into an ABLE account or a special needs trust. We want to make sure it's less than $2,000 because no matter how hard you look for the money, the government's really good at finding it if it exists. Okay, keep that in mind. As I mentioned a couple of times, a special needs trust and an ABLE account are not countable resources, assuming the ABLE account has less than $100,000 in it, and a special needs trust can have an infinite amount of money. There's no asset limit there. So those are wonderful resources as part of a full special needs plan to hold money for the benefit of our loved one. But again, if you take nothing else away from today's presentation and you've not yet applied for government benefits, take careful note of the tips we just provided. Don't make these mistakes. This is where the majority of the people get denied, get tripped up. Okay. Also, Randy would tell you, if she was doing this presentation and not me, that it makes a lot of sense for most people to hire a benefits specialist in your community to help review your situation and maybe even attend that meeting with the Social Security Administration when you're applying for benefits to ensure that none of the mistakes that commonly happen occur for your loved one. And so, as you see in the picture, it takes a lot to build something like that. You're working towards this big goal of getting government benefits. Doesn't take much to have one of those little bricks come out and everything crumbles with your best efforts. A parent who gets super excited, likes to talk about their loved one, shares a little too much, and the government takes that as, you know what, your kid's probably going to be competent on their own. We're not going to give them the money because let's see if they can work. So we want to bring in that benefits specialist to help make sure that our case is as strong as possible and is presented as effectively as possible when we apply for benefits. A final government benefit program that nobody ever talks about, and it's not a huge number, but we just want to be relatively exhaustive in our presentation today because this is something that's available nationally. It's called the Lifeline program. It's going to give each family up to one $9.25 monthly benefit, which will give you a discount on either your phone service or internet service, one or the other. You can't have both. There's one benefit for family, even if you've got 3 loved ones with Down syndrome in your household. Again, they might be their own household when they're 18, keep that in mind, but living under one roof, only one benefit per family at $9.25. And the website link is there. You go there, you log in, put your information about which program you want to have it applied to, whether it's a phone or an internet service. And you know what? It's roughly $10 a month. It's $120 a year. Not all bad. Not going to be the biggest benefit you get, but again, one more thing that people are currently eligible for that we see them not taking advantage of. We want all of our attendees today to take advantage of all the government resources that their loved one is entitled to. And this is one of those things that gets overlooked. but the lifeline benefit is simply a discount on those services, automatically eligible if you're getting SNAP, Medicaid, or SSI. Okay, so that's about what it's going to take. Not the first thing you apply for. Obviously, SSI and Medicaid are more important. Available at age 18, SNAP at age 22. Lifeline program, really, as soon as one of those other programs is in place, you'll get the Lifeline discount as well. Okay. I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk a little bit about, and we don't have a lot of time to do this, but what happens if our loved one is working at a substantial gainful activity level and is not eligible for the means tested benefits, but then because of health conditions or an additional disability from whatever accident happens, is no longer able to work. And this really applies to anybody, not just someone with Down syndrome who, has a disability that's on the government's list of compassionate allowances, which is an automatic approval of a disability. Anybody who's unable to work in the future after having worked can be receiving Social Security disability income, known as SSDI. Often confused by our families. SSDI, SSI sounds similar. One's a means tested benefit for someone who has no assets and resources. SSDI is for someone who has worked and is no longer able to work. So for most people, that's going to be 10 years of work or 40 quarterly SSA credits. However, it's also possible if our loved one works between ages 18 and 21, just within 3 years, if they're working consistently during that time period, they can become eligible for SSDI later by having those work credits accumulated very early in their adult life. There's also other cutoffs out to age 24, 26. So if we're working and we think we can work, great, let's do that. We can then be eligible for SSDI, which could be even a larger amount of money monthly than the SSI check. And that would be based on the individual's own work record. And once they would start receiving SSDI as an income benefit from not being able to work anymore, they'd be able to get Medicare health insurance after 24 months. It says 2 years, but technically it's 24 months. It's not a calendar year, it's literally a month counting process. And so that provides healthcare. What this does not come with is Medicaid waiver services. So again, even though we might get SSDI and Medicare in the future, which would cover us for income and health insurance, there wouldn't be waiver programs. So one of the things we've got to weigh is if we're working and we do it consistently for long enough, we're not going to be eligible to go back and get those Medicaid waiver services because the government's going to say, well, you used to work in the past, go find another job. So a bit of a challenge and something that really requires our families to really work with a specialist, help them understand the benefits and the potential risks of working early in a career. Because you would go on the path of then getting SSDI and Medicare, which is wonderful, but you'd also probably reduce your eligibility or eliminate your eligibility for SSI and Medicaid if you're too successful with your employment early in life. Another way to get SSDI is through what's called the Childhood Disability Beneficiary Program, okay, formerly referred to as the Disabled Adult Child Benefit. This is the same SSDI payment that a person can get on their own work record, but this says we're a disabled adult child and a parent has since retired and starts receiving their Social Security benefit. In that scenario, the adult child with Down syndrome can apply and receive an SSDI check based on a parent's work record. So in an example, let's say the parent is making $4,000 in Social Security income a month. That's what their check looks like. The child can get $2,000 a month or 50% of the parent's benefit if the spouse is married and their married spouse is receiving the spousal benefit on that same $4,000 work record. The spouse gets the $2,000 benefit, and the adult child under the CDB program would get 25% or $1,000 in my example. So it's possible that both a non-working spouse and an adult child with Down syndrome could all be receiving an SSDI check off of the primary wage earner's check. Okay, it's all based on the parent's work record, not the child's for this benefit program. And the nice thing about that is if the child becomes eligible under the CDB program, when that parent who's providing the benefit passes away, the child either moves up to 75% or 50%, depending on whether or not the spouse is also claiming on that work record. So it can be a very lucrative cash monthly benefit to our loved ones. And it could also be in addition to SSI. If that's the case, you don't get both checks, but if the SSDI amount is greater than SSI and they're still eligible for SSI, they'll get 2 checks, kind of a pro rata split because it comes from 2 different governmental programs. Kind of frustrating. Families don't love getting 2 checks, but the total dollar amount would be the greater of SSI or SSDI. In most cases, it'll be the SSDI check. But again, this is either coming off a parent retiring or the regular SSDI check is off the individual's own work record.
Mike, we've got one question.
Yep.
It's from John, and John's asking, his son has been getting SSDI for a few years. They recently moved to a different state and have applied for Medicaid. Is there a benefit to trying to get Medicare instead of Medicaid?
Okay. So, John, appreciate the question. If your child is still eligible for Medicaid in the new state, wonderful. As we talked about, Medicaid brings those waiver programs with it. There'll be a wait for that. On the application for SSDI to pick up in the new state, that should be quicker. In addition, from the start time on SSDI, it should be the 24 months, the 2-year wait program. You shouldn't have to restart that 2-year clock in a new state. It's a one-time clock for that. So once the SSDI gets reestablished in the new state, it should come right away with Medicare in the new state, from what I understand. Hopefully that answers that question. Let me get to a couple more things, and then we'll take a couple final questions at the end. So if today was kind of a fire hose for you, some of this is probably new, or maybe updating what you already knew about information, you're welcome to go to our YouTube channel where we have lots of 60 and 90-second videos to learn more about very specific planning items, including a lot of things we did not cover today. And we really encourage everyone, if you like podcasts, our relatively new Special Needs Voice podcast available on Spotify has a lot of industry leaders, including NDS's own president, Candy Pickard, who was featured in 2024. That podcast is still available to listen to if you want to hear the head of NDSS and her views on the future of the Down syndrome community. And lots of other wonderful leaders in the disability community have shared their thoughts as well. So we encourage you to use these resources as well as our website to get more information. And I have to officially put into our 1-hour presentation that we've not given anybody specific advice about their family. This is relatively generic information about governmental benefits. We hope you use it effectively to benefit your family, but again, there's no warranty that what we said is going to work perfectly for your loved one, and the process is challenging. So if you need help, reach out to us, but don't take everything I said today as it's going to be perfect for your kid and it's going to be easy to get. It is not. And if you need to reach Randy or I after today, this is how you get to us. It's got our email addresses, our office phone number here in Northbrook, Illinois. As I mentioned, we got offices around the country. We serve families all across the US on 5 continents. And if you want to take a picture of that QR code, that'll take you right to our website. We've got a special needs resources page, completely free. There's no paywall. You may be asked for your information for email. You can be added for free to our newsletter, which has lots of updated information every month. There's no sales pitch for that. We don't come call you or follow up and try to get you to become a client. If you want to become a client, we'd love to talk to you, but that's not what this is about. This is about sharing information, helping as many families as we can, like ours, living in the disability community, have as much success as possible. So with that, we are finished with our presentation. If there's more questions, we're happy to stay on and take those. If you want to call us directly afterwards, you're welcome to do that. Randy, any more questions in the Q&A we can take?
Nope.
All right.
I got them.
Well, guys, we're respectful of your time. Hopefully you can get to a lunch. Enjoy your afternoon. Enjoy the end of spring wherever you are. Hopefully in a warm climate where it's a little nicer than it is here in Chicago. But we really appreciate your time. We wish everybody all the best. We really thank NDSS for making this opportunity available to us to share what we know with all of you. Take care and best wishes.
Mike, Randy, thank you so much. I hope that our audience attending today and then viewing those viewing a little bit later online will take from this and obviously be able to apply it with their personal situations. So thank you again so much for sharing your insights and your expertise. It's a pleasure to have you. We look forward to more opportunities to work with you all in the future. And yes, I think there's some questions in the chat. These presentations will be shared with you all in PowerPoint or I'm sorry, excuse me, PDF form, which does allow those hyperlinks to be active so that you can visit the various pages and resources that were outlined, both on the NDSS and the Oak Wealth Advisors side. So thank you all so much. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.